Israel's military says it now has operational control of the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing. It has released these images, claiming to show armoured vehicles in Rafah. Israel's push into the area comes as an Israeli delegation heads to Egypt for more talks on a ceasefire proposal. Hamas, which carried out the October the 7th terror attacks, had already accepted the terms of the truce. But Israel says negotiations need to continue. DW Correspondent Rebecca Ritters is in Jerusalem, and she told us more about what is happening in Rafah right now.
Well, Anya, we saw airstrikes picking up on Sunday night, over Sunday night and into Monday yesterday after a Hamas strike on the Kerem Shalom crossing. We saw pretty significant targeted strikes pick up, and there were fears that they were signs of an imminent ground invasion, as had been being threatened. And then last night we did in fact get confirmation, or this morning I should say, we had confirmation that there is now currently a targeted ground operation taking place in that southern city of Rafah. We know, we've even seen IDF released footage of tanks on the Gazan side of that the Gazan side of that Rafah crossing, I was just on a call with the Israeli military. They were briefing the media. They were at pains to say that this, at the moment at least, is a precise and limited attack based on intelligence, and that it was targeting specific areas in that eastern Rafah area, that they were sweeping that area, that there was a special ops team sweeping the area, that they were looking for what the intelligence says is Hamas operatives operating from within that area. And that's what they say was an indication when that strike came to that Kerem Shalom area on Sunday night, that it came from that area, and that's particularly the area they're targeting. We know yesterday they gave about 100,000 people in that area evacuation orders to move towards a so-called humanitarian safe zone closer to Khan Yunis, a little bit further north in the Gaza Strip, though we know that for Palestinians who've been dealing with this now for 7 months, there is nowhere safe to go, and that even some safe areas have been targeted in the past. We don't know much more about the operation and how it will continue, whether it will widen or how it will widen, but we have seen that in other cities in Gaza, that it starts off in a limited way and then spreads out, but we don't have any more information. This is an ongoing operation.
Is reporting there from Jerusalem. Now, as that Israeli operation inside Rafah unfolds, negotiations are expected to get underway in Egypt on a proposed ceasefire deal. Israel says a plan put forward by Qatari and Egyptian mediators doesn't meet its demands. Hamas had earlier agreed to the draft deal, a small step towards possible peace that triggered celebrations inside the Gaza Strip.
A rare sight of joy after 7 months of war. Palestinians across Gaza celebrating in the streets as news reaches them that Hamas has agreed to a proposed ceasefire. I haven't seen my children for 7 months. When I heard Hamas accepted a proposal, I was very happy, as we want to return to Gaza City. We have no homes left, but we are ready to sleep on the rubble.
It was gloomy this morning, and the situation was terrifying, honestly. But now it's better, and we hope for the best.
Over the border in Israel, the families of hostages still held in Gaza also hope for a ceasefire. They marched outside the house of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, demanding he also accept a deal.
For sure, after Hamas told that they accept the deal, we should say, yes, let's sit and talk and do anything we can do to bring the hostages home. We call our government to accept this.
Netanyahu's office says a delegation is returning to Cairo for further talks, but has so far rejected the proposal, saying it does not meet Israel's demands. Soon after Hamas accepted the deal, the Israeli War Cabinet voted to push ahead with a military operation in Rafah in southern Gaza. Israel has told 100,000 Palestinians there to evacuate, in the biggest sign yet of an imminent ground invasion. They've been told to move to Al-Mawasi, a so-called humanitarian zone with little in the way of infrastructure. Israel says it has expanded the zone to accommodate the new wave of arrivals. Israel's allies have been warning against a military escalation in Rafah, where more than 1 million Gazans have sought shelter. The fear now that a ceasefire won't be reached in time to stop any further military action, and the inevitable cost to civilians trapped in southern Gaza.
And we can get some analysis from Daniel Gerlach, a Middle East expert and the editor-in-chief of Zenith magazine. He's joining us now from Riyadh. Welcome to you, Daniel. Given everything that is going on,
good morning.
What do you think is likely to happen now with the ceasefire talks? What can we expect?
Well, I think this is really the last chance with the current setup of negotiators to reach a deal. And I think everybody knows this. And we can see there has been some contradicting information about the status, about the quality of the proposal and who agreed to it or not. But the fact that the Israeli government is sending at the same time, while they are conducting strikes in Rafah, a delegation to Cairo to negotiate this deal, shows that it's very difficult for Netanyahu to get out of this proposal. Yet last night there was some reports about Hamas agreeing to a ceasefire deal that Israel had not agreed to, and that was not enough for Israel. But at the same time, it's quite difficult to imagine that the CIA director, Bill Burns, who has spent some time now in the Middle East, in Qatar and in Egypt, who is responsible for negotiating this deal, made a mistake or unclear communication with the Israelis. So I think everyone knows what it comes down to. It's the question if Israel is able and willing to accept in exchange for the hostages a permanent ceasefire, whatever they may call it. And I think that's the target of the negotiators, and that's why Netanyahu is hesitant to agree to, because if he agrees to a permanent ceasefire and he calls it a permanent ceasefire, then he would not reach his goal to eliminate Hamas, and he would not satisfy his coalition partners, and he would probably have to step down as a prime minister of Israel.
OK. Now, Israel is talking about core demands, though, isn't it? It says the terms of the deal are unacceptable. They don't meet their core demands. So what are these core demands? What is it that Israel is specifically referring to there? Well,
I don't know yet because I don't know the documents. But my understanding of it is that the negotiators were trying to let's say, disguise this idea of a permanent ceasefire into a plan of phasing the deal, 3 phases of 6 weeks of ceasefire, which would then, of course, impede any further military operation because a political process would be on the way. Whereas Israel is insisting on the Netanyahu government is insisting on its right to achieve both goals, which is the liberation of the hostages, but also have the prerogative of intervening militarily in the Gaza Strip and targeting Hamas. And of course, the Hamas leadership knows that for them, the hostages are the only way they can protect literally their lives, and that's the only leverage they have. So they would, of course, not agree to that. And it seems that some sort of a permanent setup of a permanent ceasefire mechanism is now underway with the negotiators. And since the negotiators, I don't think they've made a mistake or have not clearly communicated this to either side. I think also it's a tactical move by Hamas to come out and say, yes, we agree to this, because they wanted to make sure this happens before the military operation in Rafah escalates. But at the same time, I think that the negotiators wanted this time to preempt Israel, in particular the Netanyahu government, to, as they say, sabotage the deal, because we've heard from the negotiators before that they were quite discontent about every time they were coming close to a deal, it was sabotaged by either side. And it seems that this negotiating strategy tried to preempt such an act of sabotage.
If we could just come back to the issue of the hostages. I mean, if Netanyahu agreed to a deal to bring some hostages back, I mean, this would surely help him regain some trust among the Israeli public. How important would that be for him?
I think it is immensely important for Israel to bring back hostages, because you remember it was the first commitment, and in the beginning his daredevil strategy to apply full military pressure, to go in with a full-blown military campaign and at the same time negotiate the release of the hostages worked astonishingly. Many people were skeptical about it because, of course, these goals are actually not really complementary. They contradict each other. But of course, when it comes to the end game, and when Hamas has only these hostages left, and is the only way for Hamas to get out of this mess, then of course you see that these goals run into each other and they become much more complicated. And on the other hand, many people in Israel believe that Netanyahu tried to prolong this crisis in order to stay in power as long as possible, and the hostages were not his priority. And I think he could not really debunk this. I think still many people believe that his political future is much more important than the release of the hostages. And I'm not so sure if when he gets a significant number of hostages released, that the Israeli public will come down and say, this is now Netanyahu's success. I think the question will come up, why didn't he negotiate this earlier? Why didn't we get more people home? And what happened to those who died in custody, in Hamas custody, whereas they could have been surviving and could be with us today?
Daniel Gerlach, Middle East expert and editor-in-chief of Zenith magazine. Daniel, thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you.